One of my favorite teachings is that people will always show you who they are. It's from the teacher I worked with for years and years, Bart Anderson, and it's become my truth. I talked a little about teachings, and it was his teaching, but I've just noticed it over the years. It's become my truth. I've noticed that people always do. They always do show me who they are through their behaviors, through, their actions, and just, even if they're trying to be deceptive or manipulative or whatever else, they still will show us who they are. And if we hang out with them for a little while and, just pay attention and be willing to see them objectively, we're willing to see them as they are. If we're willing to look, that's actually how the teaching goes. People will always show you who they are if you're willing to just look, And yet, what I've found is we often do not see them as they are. And so I wonder, where is this breakdown? And and I'm talking about myself, my clients, intelligent people, very, very clear, have lots of clarity, lots of intuition, lots of discernment. They have these amazing skills. We have these amazing skills we've developed, right? And yet, despite people showing us who they are, often fairly blatantly, often they tell us who they are too, by the way, and we don't hear that either. We don't see them who they are. Why is that? The main reason that I've found is because we tend to see people as we need them to be. So we have an idea of how we want them to be, how we need them to be. Okay? And then we see them that way. This overrides our clarity, our objectivity. It overrides our intuition. Because the normal way we see people as they are, I've talked about this many times, is we allow their energy in. We see it through the third eye with clarity. We see, empathy, compassion, discernment in the heart. It goes down to the gut, and we just have this intuitive knowing, and then we know who they are. And so if we just let this allow their energy in, stop pushing energy out, allow energy in, we will see them as they are. We may need to hang out with them a little while until we get it, until we get the knowing sense, but it's there. Well, what happens is when we need them to be, we see them as we need them to be, and we make this choice, it overrides this natural system of discernment and intuition. Because instead of seeing them with clarity in the third eye, we plug in, oh no, this is how they are. They're telling me their behavior may not be saying it, but we say this is who they are. And then that's what goes down through the heart chakra, and we get our call for action, all based on we've kind of planted this thing of seeing them as we need them to be in its place. So hopefully that made sense. How do we see people as they are? How can we learn to do that? Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about why we see people as we need them to be. So some obvious examples, okay? So say say you're meeting someone, or it's in a relationship, and so we meet someone and we're attracted. They're cute, they're attractive, they're funny, they're intelligent, and we're looking for a relationship. Let's say we are. So we're gonna need them to be, like Mrs. Right or like Mr. Right. We're gonna need them to be a certain way, because they're really cute, they're smart, there's attraction, there's connection. So we're gonna override, if we don't watch it, there's gonna be a tendency to see them as we need to be. We're gonna see them as this person that we could have a relationship with. Okay, and then they will say things, or they will do things that are contrary to that, and we override it. This is one of the main things. I talk to a lot of people that have relationship stuff, and there's so many times I've heard, it's like, there were all the red flags that were there early on when we were dating. He was doing this, or she was doing this, and I noticed this, but I overrode it. I just overlooked it. I've had people that even told them, like they'll say, he told me he didn't want a serious relationship, and then 6 months, a year later, 2 years later, they're back, tears. It's like, he doesn't want a serious relationship. And it's like, he told you that on the first date, or whatever it was, date, meeting, connection, but we didn't hear it because that's not what we didn't want. Not only that, did we need them to be other than that, but we even overrode it. We might have even heard it. It's like, okay, he's telling me that he doesn't want a relationship. But I know if he hangs out and he feels that connection and he feels this love, and then he's going to decide he does want a relationship. And not that doesn't ever happen. But you see there's where we crossed over. There's where we went into la la land. He told us that he didn't want a relationship. Our senses, his behaviors are suggesting he's suggesting that. And yet we figure, well, he's saying that now, but boy, once he feels that love that we're going to have, he's going to realize that he's my soulmate. Now, I'm being a little dramatic and silly here, but I've dated women and they've said, I just want to have fun. I'm not looking for that. And it's just like, oh yeah, well, overrides, like, yeah, it's a little bit of this arrogance that when they feel my love, when they feel our connection, then they're going to decide they do want a relationship. Then even though they tend to be a player or they have tended to cheat, they won't do that with me, because once they feel the love that we have, they would never do that, even though they'll have a history of doing whatever, cheating, whatever else. There's this little arrogance, this magical thinking that comes in. And so this kind of indicates the way we can stay clear of this. It's like being willing to look at your magical thinking. We talked about coyote medicine last week. It's like inviting coyote in, and it's just saying, okay, let's look at the things. Coyote medicine, is being willing to see the things that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to accept in ourselves and in other people. It's like, okay, it's looking at, how do I want this person to be? I want this person to be this way. Okay, and it's acknowledging that. It's like, this is how I really want them to be. This is my bias. Okay, it's like, my bias is I want them to be this way. Okay, say he's my son, or he's your son. You have a bias of how you want your son to be, or it's your parent, or it's your sister, or it's this. We have a bias, and so if you just say, okay, it's my son, it's the person I'm on a date with, it's my mother, it's my best friend, and if they don't have integrity, or they aren't the way I need them to be, it's gonna rock my world a little bit. So I'm invested in them being this certain way. That's when we get into trouble. But if we look at that bias and saying, okay, I'm needing this gal that I'm dating, she's really cute, so I'm really needing her, I'm really wanting this to work. So notice that I have that bias, and then I can just listen. It's like, well, and then we look at all of it. Okay, so we the fact that I want it to work, that's important information. We're not going to say we're just going to make this objective decision. We want objective and subjective. We want the head and the heart, but we want it all. Is how I've made my best decisions, and when in not doing this is how I've made my worst decisions. It's like, we don't want just pure objectivity, because it's people. They're not a checkbox thing, but we want clarity, we want third eye, and we want heart, and we want wisdom. We want these are all ways we discern things. So we want all of it. So we notice our bias. Okay, and we notice that, whatever, she's really cute, or my son, he's just adorable, or what we notice what we want, and and what we're hoping for, and we notice there is a connection, there is attraction, there is this, but he is telling me this, okay, or she's telling me this, and there are some red flags. It's like, it seems like she's maybe looking for a different type of relationship than I am, because she's talking about this and I'm talking about this. Now that doesn't mean to not explore it, but I'm talking about looking at all the factors, like almost the pros and cons checklist thing. Remember those? It's like, and looking at all of it, looking at the gray. These are the ups, these are the downs, and then making a clear choice. We used to call it a choice with our eyes open. And then even though there are some red flags, I still can pursue that relationship. That's not wrong to do that. It's like, well, I need to spend some more time because the ups are really strong. There's a real connection here. And I really like the way, so I'm going to give it time. That's not wrong to do at all. But what I'm saying is do it with our eyes open and just saying, and I'm going to explore. There are some concerns. I'm not going to override the red flags. I'm not going to override if she's saying, I really don't want a relationship. And this isn't just with relationships. I mean, not just with romantic relationships. It's the same thing with our family members. How do I want them to be? My son's telling me that, he would never hang out with people that do drugs or, whatever else. It's like, okay, I hope that's true. He seems like a good kid. But, but I'm also, I really am wanting to hear a certain answer here. So I'm going to look at all of the information and let all of the information in without preconception, without prejudgment. I'm going to let it come in, and then I'm going to take all that information and then make a decision. Now that I'm seeing them as they are, what type of relationship do I want to have with them? And so we're considering we're encompassing the whole deal, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. Like, let's let it all in, and let's spend some time and let's get more information and let's let it all in, and then saying, okay, now I'm seeing them as they are, not as I need them to be, and it makes sense. I do want to be their friend. I do want to go out with them. Or maybe an acquaintance is a better idea, and whatever that is. Or maybe not, maybe this is not a person that it would be. It's not worth it because I know where this leads, or whatever else. But see, then we're seeing them as they are. And that saves us so much grief and so much time and so much drama and so much pain. Because we have these really, like I said, really intelligent, really discerning, intuitive, sharp people that they override it and they don't see people as they are. And then it turns into this thing that's not a lot of fun. And it might be fun in the short run. It might be fun for a while. So that is my video. It's like, so the invitation is to allow in all the information and let them show you who they are by their actions, not just their words, but we don't want to discount their words either. We want to listen to their words, but we also want to look at their actions, and are they congruent? They say they're this. Does that seem to be lining up with their actions? Does that line up with the intuitive hit I'm getting? They say this, but my gut's saying something different. Like, what's going on? What doesn't my gut like about this? It's like there's something that's, did you ever have the feel like there's something that's off? There's something that's not adding up here. They're saying this, but it doesn't feel quite right, And so it's just noticing. That doesn't mean that we scrap them or whatever else. It just means that something's off. I wonder what it is. And then we're willing to look at what that is. We're willing to explore that and ask them questions and hang out with them until we know what it is. And then it's like, okay, now it makes sense. They're saying this, they're doing this, my gut says this, now I'm seeing them as they are, at least the best that I'm able to right now. So now I'm going to make a choice on what type of relationship to have with them. So that is my video for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing week. And my invitation is to just, when you see people, notice, how you might need them to be. Notice your bias, and then allow them to show you who they are, and be willing to see them as they are, and see how that works. And I will see you in a week.